in Central Florida, we recently had an incident where Markeith Lloyd killed his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Sade Dixon, and also a local cop, Deborah Clayton. In your radio audience, what's the reaction that you heard at the time concerning, because that all of the people in the incidents were African Americans?
Yeah.
So, concerning black on black crime and that particular incident, what was the reaction of Central Florida?
Coming from my listeners at the radio station, there was a lot of concern because Officer Deborah, we used to see her at all the events, and she was very, you could see her everywhere at all of the things around Orange County and Orlando. But the concern was for the brutality of it and how it all happened. And there was a lot of fear. Markeith Lloyd had the city locked down for a few days. People were afraid to move about because we knew that he was still in the area. But for some of my listeners, there was some disappointment in the Orlando Police Department in that this guy that had just shot his girlfriend was less than a mile from her house. And they had told us that he had disappeared, and here he is at a Walmart shopping. So from the listeners at WKB 16, can I say that? From my listeners at Inspiration 1680, there was a lot of concern. They wanted him to be apprehended. There was a lot of concern for Officer Clayton's family, as well as the other deputy from Orange County Sheriff's Office who lost his life while they were pursuing Markeith Lloyd after he had stolen a car from the Walmart. So there was an outpouring of concern, and it was mainly for Officer Clayton's. Now posthumously, she was promoted to Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. There was an outpouring of love and concern for her, and there was also a concern for Markeith Lloyd in his state, because when they did catch him, it looks like they beat him up pretty bad. He had successfully hidden out in the neighborhood for almost a week, and there was some concern as to the degree to which Orlando police actually looked for him.
Okay, now you said brutality of the incident. What do you mean by that? Brutality against the ex-girlfriend or the officer, or what do you mean by that?
In both cases, and I don't know if you listened or not. It's really funny that you asked, because this was one of my Tuesday top topics, and we talk topics, and we talked about this at great length and in detail. And so I had, you know how people call you with the 411, the inside scoop. I had a lot of people who knew Markeith and knew the situation with him and Sade Dixon, his girlfriend, and so there were these, what they want to say is extenuating factors, but the fact of the matter is he shot his pregnant girlfriend and their baby. And so after this he hides out, and they're like, oh, we can't find him, but again he shows up at a Walmart less than 5 miles from where he shot Sade. And when it's reported that when Officer Clayton approached him and they had words, and she made a positive ID that yes, in fact, this was the man, the fugitive who they were looking for. I don't know who drew their weapon first, but it ended with Markeith standing over her and firing rounds into her. That's not good. That's brutal, and it was cold-blooded. and the level of violence and the level of again brutality that he possessed to do such a thing, we haven't seen that in a while. Not in quote unquote our neighborhood.
As far as the sentiment, you expressed two parties that express the same sentiment. As far as the importance of life, concerning how the police department reacted to, or the timeliness of how they reacted to the incident of the ex-girlfriend. And then also the same sentiment, well, I wouldn't say the same, but the lack of importance of life that Markeith Lloyd had for the ex-girlfriend as well as the cop.
Lieutenant Clayton.
So, as far as your audience in Central Florida through your radio station, what solutions do you think, what solutions do you hear from the community? What do you think that we should...
In that particular case, or gun violence in general?
In general, and then also in that case.
It's just sad all around, the disregard for life, and how they allowed, and I know we have some really good officers in the Orlando Police Department, but when he turned up less than 5 miles from the scene of the original crime, after they had told us that they were diligently seeking for him, searching for him, come on.
But doesn't that indicate that family and friends also is, may be at fault though?
Well, you're right, because he could have had some people hiding him out. We know that one of them, and they put these people in jail, was his employer. One of them was his employer, but to be fair to him, he says that he was afraid of Markeith. Markeith came to the store asking for money, and he said that he saw that he wasn't in, his mental state had changed, and he scared him, so he gave him the money.
Okay, and I also remember is it a niece?
Yes.
That came forward after the fact and said that he was a nice guy, but the original incident went awry. What is it in our community that gives us, that allows us to take up for each other, killing each other?
And that's in certain communities. In certain inner city communities, of which I had, because I had been saved all my life, and I frequented those communities, and there's a tightness about that where we take care of our own. You understand? Well, we handle everything in-house. It doesn't have to get outside of us. This is how we do stuff. Whereas in other communities, it's let's call the authorities. In certain inner city communities, it's we take care of our own. And so I think that's a part of the we take care of our own school of thought, where hey, Markeith is our boy. We know the good Markeith. We know that he didn't mean to do this. Blah blah blah. A lot of people went on his social pages and looked at his social pages and her, and again, I think they discounted her life. They kind of her life becomes less valuable than someone else. That's why they were a lot of people saying, see, black lives don't matter.
Okay, last question. How do we break that cycle of looking after our own?
In those types of neighborhoods, I don't know if you'll ever break that cycle. because it's deep rooted. Comes from a long way back where we did have to look out for our own because the authorities were the bad guys. The authorities were the ones that came to drag us off from our families and do unspeakable things to us. So that would be kind of hard to do. But you would have to change their minds. There needs to be a reaching out, more community policing. Remember when we grew up and we had Officer Friendly come to our school? More of that. We can get a relationship where we're not afraid that if we go to them, they might turn the tables on us. You know, draw us in. Oh, why did you have these people? Are you harboring these? No, we're just telling you that there's bad guys in our neighborhood. Right. You know, we're not a part of it. Don't implicate us. You know, and all too often that happens. And so you have people keeping to themselves. For myself, and this is personal, I had to get to a place where I had to be changed by the renewing of my mind. I had to change my thinking that the police are in fact my friends, that I have a home that I pay taxes for, so they work for me, as a matter of fact. And you have to come to that realization and be open to seeing them in a different light. If not, it's just going to be the same old hood stuff. It's going into some of these inner city neighborhoods here. Even in Temia, I went down to the soccer stadium. My brother and I, we were going over to Callahan, and for some reason or other, the city of Orlando thought it good to put a sparkling, glimmering, shimmering, shiny stadium smack dab in the middle of Paramore. We're looking at this huge stadium, and we're at a light, and a man comes up and asks us for a quarter. He's drunk as I don't know what. This is the thing. This is the dichotomy, the disparity that you have there, where it's a different world, and they're trying to function in their world, and it's going to take somebody who knows what it is to have been there to reach them and say, "Hey, man, y'all need to catch up." So it's gonna take people who care and who don't want to leave our community behind. It's gonna take people to can see that what's good for one is good for all, and we all need to go forward together. We can't leave anybody behind. No pockets in Paramore, no pockets over there off Bruton on Ivy Lane, no pockets in Pine Hills. It can't be Crime Hills anymore. None of that. And it's going to take a community concerted effort on the part of Orange County and Orlando administration, government, police, and the community.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I've read various accounts as to why black on black crime is actually an issue. I've read where, one instance where it says it's a breakdown of the family, lack of leadership in the churches, and poverty may be an issue. Also lack of education and economic opportunities. But I want to kind of narrow that down. What do you think is the actual root cause for black on black crime today?
Truthfully, I believe that I don't think that there's one specific root cause to it. I think that there are several issues that have to be dealt with within the black community. Some of the key points that you had in your question, I think, are very important. Family is of great importance, and the reason why I would say that is because we have an expectancy of greatness, of being great, and having finances and things of that nature, but we do not have the amount of oversight as far as training, teaching how to get to success. When it comes to those areas, it's missing. We can easily say, yes, the black male is out of the family, so there's no father figure to lead the way, which kind of leads a breakdown to mom, who is only a single parent, who cannot do it all and work at the same time. And you can even try to outsource the issue to community factors such as church and things of that nature, leadership. But ultimately, it will go back to the message that we send out, whether it's through media, whether it's through, let's say, television, music, different areas where we paint that picture of, you could be successful, you're meant to be successful, money is very important, and we send all of these messages out there, but no one's teaching them how to obtain it. And education is such a key, because we skip the education portion, because it's like, we want quick money, but we have to teach at some point the importance of working for or towards the success, and let them know, and our youth know, that it's important, because these things don't happen overnight. So there's a lot of areas that we could actually point towards. It's kind of rough to really pinpoint it, but I do believe that family is one of the big key points, and I think a secondary thing would be just the oversight of learning how to get to where you're trying to get to in life.
Okay. Learning. You also mentioned media and messaging. We had an off-camera discussion about media, Hollywood, movies, and you mentioned how certain movies are portrayed or betray the black community. So tell me, how do you feel that plays into, or does it play into, our perception as far as black on black crime and messaging?
Well, I think we can never overlook the point of the mind. What you put in a person's mind as far as what's obtainable for them is usually what they gravitate towards. So if they never have a picture in front of them of a successful individual that looks like them, or came from where they came from, then they often feel they should be stuck in the place that they are. And most of our movies portray us as, the deadbeat father, the drug dealer, the wife beater. When we see that in the gang members, and when we see that, that's what we paint in our mind over and over again. That's who we are. That's who we are. That's who we are. When we look in other cultures, they may have some elements of that in some of their movies or media, but they project more of substance, a life with education, a life with a degree, positions, titles, doctors, lawyers, and power in some way, shape, or form. And it's somewhat of a subliminal, it could be a subliminal message that is left with us to make us believe that this is where I belong and that's where the world belongs. And it's like, for me, I think that that's really important, that we should paint a picture of ourselves being more than what the average African-American movie has painted pictures of us in the past.
That also leads me to responsibility. Solving or leading to a reduction or taking responsibility for our behavior in our communities. Does that do we as a African-American community need to take the messaging and the media part into our hands, or is it more effective to partition other people who are already in, who have an apparatus or an organization to do so?
I think that until the community itself takes the ownership of the community that they live in, will continue to have issues when it comes to the violence and the crime that happens within the community. If our community did not tolerate it, we would see a decrease in crime. But when we play hush hush, when we play the game of don't tell what you see, and when we turn the other way instead of reporting or even having some form of corrective action within the community towards the individuals that break the law. Until we take ownership and we love our community, I believe we'll continuously have the same issues ongoing, no matter who steps in. We could change 1 million laws that would place an individual in jail for doing certain crimes, but if they're never reported, the law really doesn't carry any weight if we don't step up and say enough is enough.
So tolerating, you said, turning a blind eye,
Right.
don't turn a blind eye, and also if you speak up and tell what we know, is that enough?
I don't believe
To me, it sounds like it's at the adult level,
Right.
and it seems like it needs to start at a much earlier
Well, that's the thing. It's
time.
the funny thing is, our adults know what's happening in their community. It's the adults who have become a part of the activity themselves. And when an adult does not react a certain way, a child sees that, and the action becomes learned. So if the adults don't tell, now the child knows that we don't tell. And that'll continue. That's the only way information is passed on in our community. And it continues to go from generation to generation. It's gotten a lot worse now. But that's primarily because the adults in these communities now, the lack of the education, and I would say not only education, it's a lot of frustration that's there. A lot of them, they don't want problems. It's like, we've gotten older, just want to live in my peaceful home, and whatever's happening out and around me, let it happen. And I think that is kind of like the breakdown of our society. And if I could just add, I like to paint the picture sort of similar to cancer. If you have cancer in the outermost part of your body, the hand, the foot, you can go about day by day and pay no attention to that cancer and believe that it'll go away. But cancer spreads. And sooner or later, it comes knocking at the door of life. And it's the same way with crime in our community. When we overlook the issue and hope that it just goes away, sooner or later, it's going to come to your doorstep. And that's what we live through every day.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
One of the things we're changing is the messaging, or having a positive message out in the forefront.
One of the ways that we can improve our community, and it sounds so cliche, but it starts at home. And it starts with the relationship between parents and their children. We've gotten, the kids have kind of like gotten out of hand. They've gotten away from us with the introduction of these social pages and the internet. The kids have kind of gotten away from us. In a way, it's our fault because we let the TV and their phones babysit them now. To pacify them, we give them the phone, we give them the computer pad, we let them get on get computer time. So we've got I think the family structure needs to be addressed again. And it's not like the Donald Trump "Make America Great Again" thing. It's just we need to go back to some older values that we had. Eating together, eating dinner together, talking together. It's. I mean, you'll see whole families, and you stop at a light, and whole families, including the driver, are looking at their phone, and that shows a disconnect. There's a disconnect in the family, and not with all families, but I think that would be a really good place to start, where we start to focus on getting the family values back again.
What do you think, Thomas? Because, I mean, I've seen a lot of bad product, so to speak, come out of good homes.
Yeah. Well, we'll never know what direction a child goes in. But I believe that it's very important that what we do in reference to what's seen in the home by the children. We could preach a good message, but a lot of times even our own actions are incorrect. And so kids learn from what they see more than what you tell them. If they don't see someone in the home who has a care for that community as well, it goes beyond just me and my family. But I have a certain amount of ownership even with the children in the community that interact with my children. So when those children interact with them, when they come over, I should try to also give them some form of mentoring as well. I mean, our communities are missing one key factor, I believe, that's more important than anything else, and that is the ability to speak on, call out what's wrong and voice what's wrong, because we have this new thing now where we just zip our lip when we see bad interaction, when we see the actions of others that are wrong in our community. There was a time when I was a kid, you know, I think one of the key things that happened when I was a kid was the neighbor could straighten us if we did something wrong. Now, nobody wants you to say anything to the child. But the only problem there is even the parent doesn't say anything to the child. So, you know, we've become a society where children raise themselves.
Well, my problem with the community is having, well, the problem with the community is that we don't really have a community as we used to have. Once upon a time we had a community, like you said, where anyone in the community could discipline the child, and everybody knew everybody. But now, when you live in a community, you might not even know your next door neighbor. And your community is more than just your home. You know, it's what church you go to make sure they got in the right school, who they hang with, and so on.
So what I was thinking is that since we're on the family and chastising or speaking up, I've read some incidents in Chicago where, because you know, that's the thing now, every incident they mention crime in Chicago. But anyway, one of the things that they said is that nowadays the grandparents who are raising the kids, or even the parents, or the aunts and uncles who are raising the kids, the problem child who, you know, has a gun or whatever, out there stealing, they don't correct them because they're afraid to nowadays. So, I mean, what do we do with that? How do we get the family structure, even if we do get the family structure back together again, what do we do with these adults that's afraid of the kids?
You know,
or teenagers?
I think you just said something that was so powerful. The mentioning of the stranger next door. when you realize that now we have a community where no one believes the same thing anymore.
Wow. That's right.
That's that's the true thread of a breakdown in any structure, whether it's family, whether it's community. But if we go to family, that's the most important part of community. So if we go to family alone, and we think about it, the family alone, even in the family now, you can't find families that believe everything the same. You know, we went to church. So we went to church and everybody believed the word. But now, you might have one member in the family think they're Muslim, one's Christian, one's don't know if they believe anything. And then when it comes to aunts and uncles and those that, you don't really know if they are as strict as the parent would have been with their child even now. It's like one believes, okay, maybe the child needs a gun. The other believes he doesn't need a gun. One says, don't fight. Go tell somebody about it. One says, fight. You know, it's such a mixture now to where I think that's going to be like the biggest issue, especially speaking of Chicago. I work with a partner of mine. We have a company in Chicago that actually we go into the inner city there, into the school system. And what you would see in the school system is a common breakdown of kids who have no hope whatsoever for tomorrow. And that comes from home.
Yes.
It's coming from home. It's not that they come, you know, for us it was like you went to school, you believed you was somebody at home. But when you got to school, it would be a teacher that would say something to you to kind of knock you off your rocker a little bit, where you feel like, I feel like I'm questioning myself because the teacher talked down to me and made me feel this way, or some other person that was in authority. But now, coming from home, they feel like they're worthless because the parents don't even look at them as somebody. So it's just a lot of beliefs, and that's a bad thing for our community.
It is, and I piggyback off of what Thomas was saying. It's a societal breakdown because it's almost anything goes. So publicly and openly to make a lot of people question God, whether there is a God, and to question God and to say, okay, what we're doing is okay. So, you know, it's almost like anything goes, and how dare you judge me? How dare you talk about me? So, whereas we had a day in America where we were almost all on the same page, we're not anymore. We're not anymore. It's a question of morals, a question of value, and anything short of murder almost is accepted. Is accepted on some level. In some places, it's accepted. How dare you question my likes? Anything short of murder and some of these things that have to do with sexual crimes, it's every man for himself. And so there's been a breakdown, and Thomas hit it right on the head. It's in the family, man.
It starts with the family, but we have no control of our communities. None. And that's the biggest problem. You're afraid to let your kids go almost anywhere. So we don't build our own communities. We have no control. We don't decide what goes on in our communities. So, yes, we have problems.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I want to bring up a topic. I forgot which one of you mentioned it in your interviews, but of community policing. Is that, first of all, is it a factor? Is it effective?
Wow.
And, or do we actually need to participate in the police business itself?
One of the things that we studied in college was I believe it's in China, the most successful police structure that ever worked was community policing, where the police the new sergeant came in and he changed everything when it came to the way policing happened. It used to be where they would just walk through the community, they would patrol, they'd go back and report. But then the crime didn't really go down just from their presence. But what happened, they began to interact with the individuals there, became friends with the individuals there. And once they became more of acquaintance, they could trust each other. And once they were able to trust each other, the crime rate went down because the community itself was looking out for the community. And they just had a friend that was a cop that could make things happen if by any chance they could not do it through their presence. So I think that they tried to model that in America, but despite how much they tried, they haven't been successful at it because of the tension of the past in America. But I believe if we begin to love our community enough, if you don't care about the community that you live in, I don't care what law you pass. The law will never change the community. It will always be the people who live in it and the amount of love they have for their community. And it's sad because most of the time you only hear the outrage when a family member dies. As long as it's somebody else's family,
Yes.
you know, what a shame, but no hands on it. But as soon as it's, you know, your family member, it's outrage. And I think that's something that we should really pay attention to. I think if we did more community policing and we cared about it, I believe that crime would definitely go down.
Well, community policing is the most effective way to police. And the problem we have is that the policemen don't become a part of the community. Here in the U.S., guys go into communities, they come from other communities. People don't know them. They ride through or walk through or ride their bikes through. But the people don't know them. They don't communicate. They don't deal with each other. So we really don't have community policing in the U.S. That's the problem.
And then let me put community policing in this light, where we of the community police ourselves. That would help a whole lot. And that's the old school that we're talking about, and that's where I come from too. Man, I come from a neighborhood, you all, where everybody knew everybody. My next door neighbors, yes. And all the way, not just my next door neighbors, but the whole block. Right. We knew everybody on our whole block. Right. And I was talking to my wife the other day, and I was longing for the time where that was true, where I could walk, you know, Mr. Smith, Mr. Reisinger, Mr. Jones, I knew everybody. And what happened was, and I grew up, and I want to interject this, I grew up in a white neighborhood in Miami. My whole neighborhood was white in Miami. And then when we moved in, we started to see them move out. Now, the black families that moved in, the same sense of neighborhood and reaching out to one another was there. And in about 1980 or so, it just started changing. No more speaking to one another. As certain people moved in, we didn't make the effort to go down and say, hey, we're the Fosters, how are you, you know, welcome to the neighborhood. And inevitably, we all became strangers.
Right. Well, the problem is you don't have a neighborhood church, a neighborhood school,
and even within
a park.
You know, good, right? When we congregated, we all met at the park every day.
That's right. So you knew everybody in the community. Now everybody goes their different.
Yeah, yeah. And even with the churches, there's no mingling.
Wow.
Yes.
It's so sad.
Yes.
You know, even with the churches, there's no mingling.
Except for the small church.
Yeah. You know,
we mingle here.
You know, when you have, we've split the community. And when I say we, I'm not talking about the church has split the community. Our mentality as African Americans has split the community. We have a stigma on each other to where if you come to speak to me, you're after something. You might rob me. You might be coming to my house to shake my hand so you can see what you can take. That's the thought process that we developed. And you know, it was a time when you travel to New York, when you travel to the city outside of the countryside, you would see that mentality where it was like, we coming from the country, we wave, everybody drive by, and everybody wave back. Even if you don't know each other, you spoke. In the city, it's not like that.
It's not like
if
that.
you speak, it's like, what you talking to me for? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's the stigma we've attached to each other, and I believe that, you know.
Did we do it to the community, or was done from outside?
I think it's a matter of both, but I'm gonna tell you, we went to a magic game. You know, you have to park down there off of Paramore and church and all those places. I was ashamed of myself because when you go into some of the neighborhoods, I was fearful. These are my people. And I was scared.
You were afraid?
Yeah. and you know, I got it.
Extra cautious.
Yeah. And I'm like, where does this
That's
come
not a bad
from?
area, yeah.
Where does this come from? So,
But now you understand how others feel when they come in the black community.
It's a stigma.
Yes.
You know,
it's what Thomas is saying.
But that is not a bad area.
It's really
not a bad area. It's not dangerous there, but you have this perception
right.
that it is.
You paint this picture, and we spoke about this earlier. The content of a black film paints us as the dope boy, the robber, the mugger, the gangster. Stereotypes. And whether you do it directly, whether you know it indirectly or directly, your mind connects to that stereotype and it paints that picture. So even if you go into a neighborhood that looks a certain way,
Yes.
you automatically throw your guard up from what you saw before.
Yes.
Doesn't it go back to what he alluded to, where does this come from us, does it come from the outside?
It's a mixture, and that's why I said a mixture, because the reason why I say it's a mixture is because it's those who can gain off of us. They love the fact that they could sell something like this, so they gain from that. But then those of us who we trust to be our mouthpiece, that film the films,
Wow.
Yeah.
they also paint the same picture of us. So the combination, what you see, it's just like a child. If a child grows up in a home where father and mother is fighting all the time, and father is always calling her out of her name and beating on her, 9 times out of 10, that young man's going to grow up disrespecting young women and will disrespect his wife until he learns something better. But it's the learning process. It's the see it and you become it. You are around that environment, you become that environment. And that's what they do through media, through the film, music industry, everything paints that picture. And we don't help it.
So what is the solution to stopping that? Should we censor our own media from our own people, or demand a better product?
You see, you can easily do that from the ground up. It's easy for us to say that from the ground up, but you have to have an audience to sell it. This goes right back to the family. If someone's teaching if you're guarding the ears and the eyes of your child, then they'll know that this material is garbage material. This doesn't speak for who I am. So they won't attach to that. They won't buy that. I believe it was, I was telling you earlier about how most of our movies, they stereotype ignorance through our people. And it's like you see a white film, and I hate to just label it as a white film, but you'll see a film with other ethnicities. And they have a storyboard. It tells a story in the movie. It paints a picture. It takes you on a journey. It's life. And it's like, you see this, and then when you see our film, it's somebody either cursing out somebody. My dad used to call it foolishness. We're so full of foolishness. Like, we want to laugh and be entertained so much that we don't realize that we're killing ourselves in the process. Because what we feed our brain through wanting to be entertained is destroying us, because our actions start to look like what we eat.
My God. And I come from that era of black exploitation movies. And when one came out every week, Superfly, Coffee, Shaft Big Score, man.
Oh my
I come from that era,
Yeah.
and you see the other races mimicking us, whereas and I guess they call themselves getting our flavor. But I have to piggyback on what Thomas is saying. It's all about what's put out there and how it's received, and how we again, I think we okayed some of this stuff. I think some of it is our fault because we let it go. There's a movie called A Soldier's Story. Did you guys see A Soldier's Play? And in the movie, there's a kid that plays a guitar. And they were over in Germany, where the Germans already thought that we had tails. There was a bunch of racial stuff going on. The sergeant is a proud black man. He wants him to stop doing this pickaninny stuff. Where he's shucking and jiving and bucking his eyes, watermelon eating, chicken eating, all that. He wants him to stop that for the sake of his race. But there's an entertainment value that goes along with it that Thomas alluded to.
Yes.
That we've just allowed to run rampant and get away from us. We are not in control of the narrative anymore. We're not in control of that anymore. So, and it's just out there. So now that the white kids call each other the N-word, and it's okay. It's okay. It's transcended race.
But you know, the communities that we're talking about, the people live there did not design those communities. Many of the communities, like the projects in Chicago, they were built for blacks, for low income. And you put them all in one place, you're gonna have a problem. And cities have been doing that for the last 75 years. I was talking to the city manager here in Groveland, and he was asking me what was my concern for the city. I said, well, one concern is to make sure that we don't build slums.
He said, I met with the guy who owns Amstock, and he said, we just built, he said, we were the ones who put the first Amstock in the Marion area. We built it for him. He said, the guy told him he borrowed $100,000 to start the Amstock with. Within the first year, I don't want to misquote this, but it was somewhere in the range of $16 million he made within the first year.
And I thought it would never work.
$100,000 plan.
I thought it would never work.
It was in the black community.
Yes.
All of them had. We have, something that opened my eyes, and I like to give my testimony a lot, because I went from being sick with little to no money to being blessed with a lot of money. And the reason, though, what God put in front of me was, we missed the word, the layout of stewardship. How important it is to govern those funds and know what is necessary to spend money on and what is not necessary to spend money on.
Yes.
And what is very necessary to invest in. And I look at priorities, and that's something that our people miss. We'll buy those, everybody came down on Bill Cosby about those $100, $200 shoes when he mentioned that. But then they can't put their kids through college and things like that. This is the truth.
Yes.
But our people, I think scripture says it best. It's like a fool hates rebuke. A wise man loves it. Because when you get rebuked, when you're able to see yourself, you gravitate to that and grow from it. But our people, we have such a stubborn mind to where if you call us out and say this, you're doing the wrong thing with your money, it's like you can't tell me what to do with my money.
You can't tell me.
You know,
But it's too late to tell them then.
yeah.
It's too late to tell them then because they're grown, but you have to be around the table. You have to have that exposure. You have to, and if you don't, you just don't know. And that's the problem with our communities. That's the problem. Our communities are in bad shape because we just don't know. We don't have the knowledge.
We have organizations, we are revitalization organizations like Magic Johnson and others that are doing that. And they're not going through the government, they have their own organizations, they're going in and revitalizing the African American community. However, it's not happening fast enough, and it's only a few that have the knowledge and the know-how to do that. So how do we accelerate that to, I know we can't reach every community, but how do we accelerate that to reach more than what we're reaching now?
I just think that it's terrible when someone else can see your worth more than you can see your worth. And if we could get people to start seeing what they are capable of, how much we make everyone else rich. I believe that it could move a lot faster if they realize that. And then you could put it in a realistic, layman term, how they can see how their money could do something different for them if they didn't waste it. Because I lived on Mercer Drive. And when I lived on Mercer Drive, I saw.
In Palm?
No, not actually, it was down in Lake
Bordeaux.
Palm, the next one, Bordeaux. Yeah. So when I lived there, what I saw was we got a lot of hood rich people.
Hood rich. That's good.
You stay in the neighborhood, it's about $400 for rent. You on welfare. You got a Benz outside.
Wow.
But you stay in, it's almost like if I go anywhere else, it will push me to work. You see what I'm saying? Like, I like comfort. Because half the people that's living there, it's not poverty. It's just they just don't care. They look, I don't want anything. If I leave the hood, then that means I have to work. Because right now, I can get the welfare, I can get food stamps, I can work a job that's paying me a minimum wage and still drive my Benz because it's only $400 for this. But I can lie a little bit on some of the finances and the welfare takes up for the rest. And it's like, if we have a lazy bone in us, and you begin to think that you should receive help.
You're entitled.
You're entitled to this.
Yes.
And that's
only if you're raised
in
that situation.
So let me
because a lot of outsiders, believe of the myth that, a certain culture is lazy. However, laziness is a learned behavior.
Right.
And it may be what a household was taught.
and I see why people get mad. Certain people who go to work every day like myself, tax-paying individuals, these people that say, oh, I want a drug test, everybody will get food stamps. That's true. In certain neighborhoods, in the inner city, they learn how to manipulate the system, and it's just as Thomas says, if they move out, they associate moving up and working with moving back. Because the government won't give them certain things if they start to assert themselves and do for themselves. So, and it's one thing that I thought about as I was sitting here, these young kids are really impressionable, and a way to fix all of this is to to start with the messages of them being self-supporting and sustaining early on with these on the devices that they're on now, because I don't think a lot of these younger kids are going to go quote unquote the inner city or ghetto way, the rat way. They're not with that. They're on a whole different level, and I think we have some hope in these young kids. The kids that are Thomas's kids' age, there's hope there.
Yeah, but he's not in the hood. Yeah, but the kids that are in the hood,
Right.
I don't see very much hope for them, especially those that of a certain age.
Right.
And the only way, I think, to really change it, to make it better or faster than what they're doing now, is to really concentrate on the younger,
Yes.
on the next generation.
Yes.
Make sure they go to the right schools. Make sure they have recreation centers.
We've got to get them from 6 to 12.
In the hood that supervise, because then they will have a future. When you see guys saying that, they don't feel they have a future.
They don't have a shot.
And so that's just an excuse.
Right.
Yes.
Right, and they lose the enthusiasm, 3rd, 4th grade, is
Yes.
because the interests of parents shift. Most of these kids do the stuff they do because the parent is excited.
To start out.
Yeah, you learned this today, oh, you learned that, you learned this. Sooner or later, it shifts from the parent being the source of the peer pressure. And the kids at school become the source of the peer pressure. Because now they live up to the dreams of what's around them at school. They could care less about the girls, who's cute, who's not, who's got on the nicest clothes. All of the interest jumps out the window. But the parent kind of takes a backdrop. But then we also become less incorporated in their lives.
Yes.
Because we'd rather give them an after-school program. So when I was in school, we went to school, after school, we went home. And we spent the rest of the day at home with my family, with my father and my mother at home. So my father had a mechanic shop, we had to be in the mechanic shop. We did our homework, ate our dinner, went to bed. That was our life every day. At a young age, we had to learn something. We didn't wait till we was junior high school to get the job, after school job. We was working already at home from the fields to the mechanic shop. We was working and learning a trade already. Now, there's just none of that. I mean, black-owned businesses, that's far and few. It's like, you really are allowing them, send them off to football practice, send them to karate class, send them to this, send them to that, let somebody else take care of that, because I'm too frustrated. I'm too overwhelmed with work myself. I don't want to take it. We have to sacrifice. We have to sacrifice. And I do agree, a lot of them are afraid and they don't believe they're worth anything more. But we have a mixture in that.
Yes.
We have a mixture in that because it's sad. Anytime you see the young ladies that can go, once they get a baby, get 2 jobs, raise the kid, still get food, and then the male wakes up in the morning, lays on the couch, plays video games, won't go out and even try to fill out an application.
You know why?
It's sad.
Yeah, but you know why? He doesn't feel he can do it. That girl, she went to school, she went and did her homework, she learned, she even went to college. The guy fell out of school at 3rd grade. He dropped out. And so when he's an adult, he's in trouble.
That is interesting. So have you noticed, what I noticed is with the age difference, one sees lack of achievement or to excel or the willpower to excel. One sees it as laziness and the elder sees it as lack of confidence.
We still have a tremendous amount of influence
Yes.
and power.
Yes.
But for some strange reason, we can never come together and meet with the mind of our own people to figure out a plan to where we borrow from our own establishments.
Wow.
We build our own community. You can't build we can't build a single structure together.
But that's why we never had that exposure. We never sat around the table with the bankers, the planners, the community builders. And we don't think that way.
Right.
We don't think that way. And so we will, until we start building our own communities.
Right.
And planning our own communities and deciding what we want for our children, then even our children, other people plan for them. We don't.
It's a matter of maturation and conformity. And people's definition of maturity is different. It differs. Just like when we first started talking. And while you were talking, Thomas, all I could see is what could we use? You said what medium? I could see just bombarding YouTube with videos of young, successful black entrepreneurs that look like these people, that look like these kids. Well, the kids will listen to them and go where they are. They stay on YouTube.
Yeah.
They stay on YouTube for some of the most craziest videos. Give them something with that element. The lights, the music, and all that kind of stuff that'll draw them in, and maybe 45, a minute and a half blurbs of successful people shouting out, telling them how they made it. This is how we did it. They see Sean, they see Puffy Combs, they see what's the guy named like Jay-Z,
Right.
all this, and that's kind of unrealistic.
Right.
To give them realistic.
That's like the baby
people that they can look up to and that can say, hey man, this is what we did, dude. I was out on the corner, but man, I came in. I've got a great way for you to make some money, and all of us, and I like what Thomas and Pastor said, we're our own paycheck.
Right.
We've got to get out of the mindset of working for somebody.
Right.
God blessed us.
Right.
To be able to produce, that we can sustain our families. But we're so used to punching in, going to work each and every day. Like Thomas said, he didn't think he could do it. Same with me. I have a sister, and man, I have to repent for this. My sister, she would try some of everything. Nothing. She was what we call a free spirit. Some of everything. She didn't want to work for anybody.
Right.
But to us, we was like, something wrong with you.
Right.
You feel me? Long story short, she's doing very well now.
Yeah.
And she works for herself. As a community, we've got to get that down. We've been working and people, you're going back to the slave mentality, crab in a bucket mentality. Well, some of that stuff has some kind of credence.
Yeah, and I think that's great, because if you show more blue collar, white collar,
That's good.
African Americans who have made it,
Yeah.
who have created some form of their success through business or whatever, I think that would be great, because realistic goals. We often put stars in front of our children and give them the thought that if you never reach that status, you're nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't want my son to strive to be the rapper. I don't want him to strive to be the football player. I don't care how much money they make. That's not what I want him to strive for. Because once again, you become an entertainer. I don't want my son to be an entertainer. Don't live to entertain people. The jail is full of people who live to entertain people. That's why you see the dope boys sell drugs, to buy the car that people will say, wow. To buy the clothes that people will applaud. To buy the jewelry that people will applaud. That's what they live for, to entertain. I don't want him to do that. I want him to understand that living is about sustainability. Creating a foundation of sustainability where he can take care of him and his family without someone having a hanging their job over their head as far as I can take this from you at any point in time. You know what I mean? I want him to say, I have my own destiny. I paved my way. And I think if we could show that, like you said, if you can show that, I believe somebody, you won't get everybody. You just won't get everybody. But you'll get, somebody will be blessed by it somewhere, where they'll change their mind to where it's like, I can do more than what I'm doing now. Because man, that paycheck effect, that's one of the most drastic, that's one of the biggest crippling areas for our people, is the paycheck effect. I used to hear people say that back in the day. You got a job, you better keep that job. Better be happy and keep that job. It's like, this is the ceiling on my job. So anything you want beyond that ceiling, this is it.
Right.
What they willing to give you. I think we can show how that could be done correctly, legally, and correctly. I think that can be shown. If you can show that, I believe it'll help somebody.
And then you got it. I got it.
Yeah. Thank you. That was good.
Yeah.